All right. Hello, everyone. Thanks for bearing with us for so long now. My name is Alex, well, Alex number 2, and like Gil, I am also looking at jackdaw winter roosts, but specifically, I want to find out whether or not they are using voting systems to make some of the group decisions, where these huge flocks are making decisions using voting. And so the winter time is when the social life of a jackdaw really hits its peak, with hundreds of birds like sweeping through the sky, heading towards the roost site, as you saw from Gil's videos. And here they'll settle overnight before leaving again early the next morning. And that looks a bit dodgy, but here's a video of about 400 or so jackdaws heading into a roost in Bizzo. Right, so groups like these, they're usually comprised of multiple overlapping social networks and a vast number of monogamous pairs that all come together to settle in a very specific patch of trees for the night. But the following morning around sunrise is when something really quite spectacular happens when all the birds leave. As you can see from this video, this is also at the same Bizzo roost. A lot of birds, yeah? Yeah. Yeah, so these birds who have been in this roost all the way through the night, just suddenly, at one point in the morning, they just erupt out of the roost simultaneously and fly off together. And it's a bit of a mystery how all these birds are able to synchronize the timing of their departure with so many other individuals. Now, in the animal kingdom, it's actually been studied a fair bit that animals can synchronize their group behavior using voting systems. For example, wild dogs, they use sneezes, which act as a means of casting a vote to the group to say, yeah, I'm ready, let's go, I want to go hunt now, get some food, I'm feeling pretty hungry, it's been a long night. And also buffalo, they will just stand and gaze in the direction they want the herd to move in, and if enough of the buffalo are doing that, it'll encourage the whole herd to finally move that way. In the insect world, ants will head out to go find a new nesting site, and if enough of them accumulate on one particular site, then that site is deemed the most popular, and the colony will then move over there. It's a similar case with honeybees, except these guys do a special little waggle dance, which is a way that they advertise the direction of a new home that they found. Even cells, they require a certain amount of energy to have been built up before being able to communicate and send signals to each other. But there's not a lot known about how birds use voting systems. And we believe that this is something that might be going on, because if you remember from the video, they were calling a lot to each other. There's a lot of calling going on. And we think that they're using these calls as a means of casting votes to let the rest of the group know that they're ready to leave the roost. So sound recordings that we have actually taken using recorders like this here have indicated that the calling gets louder and louder closer to departure, and therefore it potentially could mean that there's a certain level of calls, certain level of voting that needs to take place before the group decides to depart from the roost. So here I'm going to show you a little diagram of how we predict that the voting moves through the roost and how calling gets amplified as it spreads. So say over here we have a small cluster of jackdaws. It's slightly hidden by the text here, I don't know what happened. But say they start calling a little more loudly than normal. Perhaps they're particularly eager to leave. Then this sound, if it spreads in a 360-degree direction, as you might expect, perhaps a larger cluster more in the center of the roost picks this up, and there's an infectious property to this calling, we think, and they start to get into a more excited state, and they start calling more as well. So it gets louder and louder, and this calling spreads to more areas of the roost, until eventually you get so much calling going on, that the whole roost is engulfed in a heightened state of excitation now. This is going to get loud later on, isn't it? Alright, so the way we can think about how these sorts of processes can lead to the departure in the end, there's actually quite a similarity between how this calling builds up and the way that waves function, in terms of the way they build up and then they die back down again. So the calling acts in a similar kind of way. So the jackdaws might get really excited and then suddenly it just dies back down again. But eventually, calling builds to a point where they all suddenly decide to leave. So, like before, we might have a cluster of jackdaws, slightly more eager to leave. They pass on this excited state to their neighbours, but maybe this calling dies down again. This may happen several times, and in multiple areas of the roost, before building up once again. And it's also likely that in other parts of the roost, calling starts to happen, and other individuals might start to become more excited and have higher energy levels. They pass this over to their neighbours, so the whole roost is suddenly getting so excited and is so buzzing and eager to leave that it triggers a departure. So we think that the jackdaws are using this voting system as a means in which to make decisions as a whole group and satisfy the majority's interests. And this winter I want to use playback speakers to test all these predictions, to see whether or not introducing more intense levels of calling earlier than might be expected could induce an earlier departure. And if this happens, this would heavily suggest that they are relying on this calling getting to a certain point before deciding to leave. So, yeah, come back next year to see how that pans out. So, as far as I'm aware, this research is the first that looks at voting in animals on such a large scale, with hundreds of individuals interacting at once and within a relatively small area as well. So it's really quite an exciting avenue to be exploring, and I hope you've enjoyed hearing about it, and so thank you for your time.